FEMA's emergency response dealing with earthquake and emergency response to earthquakes. There are two main agencies in California for emergency response: California Emergency Management Agency and Federal Emergency Management Agency. They both work hand in hand cooperatively to respond to any natural disasters, such as storms, winter storms, flooding, mud flows, and also earthquakes. Earthquakes is going to be one of the focus of this presentation. There are five functions in the incident command system. At the very top of the hierarchy, you have the command, and directly below you have four direct other groups. One is operation, planning and intelligence, logistics, and finance and administration. For the command section, you have an incident commander, also known as the IC. His overall responsibility for the effective management of the incident and must ensure that an adequate organization is in place and is working effectively. The IC may assign the authority to conduct the primary functions of operations, planning, intelligence, logistics, and finance administration to others. He may also find himself doing one of those responsibilities if the incident is not a large-scale incident. For example, if there's an earthquake, there's a 9.1 earthquake like in Japan, the incident commander will delegate who does what because it's such a large scale incident. But if it's more like, let's say, a California earthquake, 3.2, he himself can find himself doing some of those tasks instead of appointing someone else. His overall responsibility is basically for the cohesion of the entire structure to flow properly, to work properly, and to communicate very clearly with no code words, because if the incident commander starts giving out code words or starts speaking in any kind of codes, the different agencies that are present could hear them and get mixed up, and it'll just cause confusion. At the second level of this hierarchy, you have operations. Operation is responsible for the coordinated tactical response in accordance to the incident action plan. Operation also carries subdivisions within its own group. From the very top, you have branch, division, and resources. Branches basically are for functional or for geographical purposes. The division basically sets the groups of what's actually going on. If there's a division, let's say for cleanup, a division for emergency, that's what that would be. And resource would be actually making up the task forces, teams, squads, or platoons that would be necessary for operations. Still on the second level of this hierarchy, next to operations, you have planning and intelligence. Intelligence is responsible for the collection, evaluation, and documentation of the information of the current incident. It always has to be up to date with the latest news and the latest status of the current incident. Within planning intelligence, you have more subdivisions, such as resources, situations, demobilization, and documentation. Again, resources are the actual squadrons, what's actually happening and stuff. The situation is the most up-to-date news on everything, basically from the project to what's going on, to the emergency response teams, to resources, to all that stuff. And then you have documentation. You have to basically have all the documents of what's been going on, what's the plan, and what's going to be basically our future plans to take care of this incident. Going along on the second level of this hierarchy, you have logistics. The logistics section is responsible to provide facilities, services, personnel, equipment, and materials in support of the incident. The requirement to provide on-site logistical support will vary based on the size and scope of the incident, the functions involved, and the discipline that has incident jurisdiction. Basically, if the site is too dangerous, for example, in Japan, when there was the 9.1 earthquake, there was a nuclear incident going on, and it would be too risky to put an incident command center right there within the radius of the radiation that was spewing out. So what they did, they had an off-site incident command center, which provided, with logistics, it provided, a lot more help. And, going along on that same token, logistics has subdivisions, which are communication, medical, food, supplies, facilities, and ground support. I mean, those are pretty self-explanatory for themselves. So basically, having such an important role, you wouldn't want to jeopardize your logistics, your command center, by putting it in harm's way. That's why I stated that the incident command center can be on-site or off-site depending on what's going on. Lastly, on the second level of this hierarchy, we have finance and administration. Finance and administration is responsible for all financial and cost analysis aspects of the incident, and for any administrative aspects not handled by other functions. This main section, finance and administration, has below it subdivisions as well, which are time units, procurement units, compensation claim units, and cost units. Basically, time units, it's you're gonna have to see how long this is gonna take. For example, again, I'm gonna use Japan because it was such a big earthquake. The time unit assessed that there was about 7 years worth of damage that happened within that short period of time with the earthquake and the hurricane and the tsunami and all that stuff. Along with that, you have the cost unit. You have to see how much is that going to cost you if it's within your funds, because as much as we would always want to help, there's always funds. There's always a certain limit of how much we could use. So we basically have to use our money wisely.
It's a cleanup hardly ever seen. This was Minami Sanriku in northern Japan 3 months ago. This is the exact location today. Years of cleaning still lie ahead. What used to be people's homes, streets, and communities have turned into huge piles of garbage. Thousands of damaged houses and factories are being demolished. Millions of tons of debris have to be removed.
Normally we have 58,000 tons of garbage each year. Now we are facing over 6 million tons of rubbish. This is about 107 years worth of garbage.
No one knows yet what to do with such an amount of garbage. For now, authorities are building mountains of waste everywhere. Plans to recycle or turn it into biogas still have to be finalized. A government deadline to finish collecting all the rubbish by March 2012 will likely be missed. The cleanup is more likely to take at least 3 years.
People's lives, their houses, their belongings, their memories, even someone's flowers, all piling up as mountains of garbage. And this is only 15% of what has to be collected in total. Witnesses of the tsunami that will take years to clean up.
In the middle of all this garbage are Katsuji and Kyoko Ishimori, living in an evacuation center after their house was destroyed during the tsunami.
When we came here, it was so cold, there was hardly any smell. But now with the temperatures rising, small flies started flying around. Volunteers gave me spray to kill them, but it doesn't work. The higher the temperatures, the bigger the flies get. It's really creepy.
Health officials worry if the tons of rubbish are not cleaned up soon, it will pose a severe health risk for residents, some of whom have decided not to wait for authorities and start recycling some of the garbage themselves. A businessman has built a playground for survivors of the tsunami solely from rubbish, creating a sign of hope and returning smiles to children in a place devastated by nature. Stefan, Al Jazeera, Northern Japan.
And for my last slide, I have a couple of pictures here. On the top left corner, I have a FEMA offsite command center. You know, it's a big RV. It has all the logistics in there. So that would be a picture of an offsite center. On the right of that, you have a construction cleanup of Haiti. You know, they're being very precautious of what's around them, what's their surroundings. On the bottom left, you see people in a face mask and oxygen mask. Basically, that was in Japan because of the radiation that was going on. They were going to quarantine people, and that's the same thing that you see on the bottom right-hand corner. You see cranes basically cleaning up 7 years worth of mess. And the interesting part about this is that till this day, they still haven't figured out what are they going to do with all that debris, with all that mess. So that's another pretty interesting thing that I think logistics or organization would basically have a major role in that.